I've recently been thinking about the creative impulse. What is that? You know that feeling when you become inspired by an idea, comes out of nowhere, and you feel compelled to act on it? You know, what is that feeling? Where does it come from? It happens to me a lot, for example, when I'm doing something really monotonous. If I'm driving or if I'm taking a stroll, that's usually when I get this burst of inspiration. It comes very quickly and it comes with this yearning to want to be expressed. And so I usually have to stop whatever I'm doing, write it down, record it into my phone, just get the idea down. But it comes with a definite energetic force. And it's interesting to know that it always comes in those moments when my thinking mind is being consumed by something else. Or for example, when I'm driving my car, at that point, my conscious awareness is involved in the driving of the car automatically, which means that there's space there for something else to emerge. It's almost by clearing away the egoic state of mind, something emerges, this creative impulse, and it takes over and it wants expression. So the more I've made music over the past 25 years, the more I realize it's really about getting into a receptive state, inviting these type of inspirations in so the creative impulse can take hold. You know, that may involve, walking in nature or driving a car or any process that you feel brings this on. Sometimes I notice that if I don't feel like being very creative, just the act of doing can bring it on. For example, if I don't want to go to the studio to work, but I go, I've got to do it, I'll just start working, and as tedious as it is at first, eventually I get inspired by something. It's almost like the act of doing brings on inspiration. And I think that comes back to what we were talking about before, that as soon as my ego, my conscious mind is involved in something, it allows space for that to come up. I remember reading Quincy Jones's book years ago, and he talks about when he creates music, he always put the TV or the radio on, which I thought was so weird because I could never create music with the TV or the radio. But the way he explained it was profound. He said, it busies up my conscious mind so then inspiration can come through. So he understood the creative impulse very deeply. So I think most creatives can relate to what I'm talking about. Most creatives learn to work with this creative impulse. They learn to give way to it. And the more you do that, the more it manifests in your life, the more it gives you good ideas, to say it any other way. Now, I've been exploring this for years. It's always fascinating because you never come to fully understand it. You come closer to maybe being able to put words to it. But even that's difficult. But I've definitely come to understand the nature of what the creative impulse is. And let me share a couple of those with you. So first of all, it's autonomous, which means it comes of its own volition. It comes as if it's external to you in some sort of way. It's independent and it impresses itself on you. It wants your time. It wants your attention and it requires attention. And that brings me to the second one, which is that it seeks expression. So it comes with an urgency to create. And it's almost like a dream that if you don't write it down right then, it's gone. So that urgency means that you have to capture it in the moment. The third characteristic that I've found is that it asks for sacrifice. And what I mean by this is it usually comes in a way that interrupts your plans in the moment. So you have to give attention to it. But even deeper than this, it usually comes with an idea or a vision that exceeds your capability. It may come as like an idea or an aesthetic feeling that forces you to work, to be of service to it. So for example, it may give you an idea that may take weeks, months, years to eventuate. I've had creative impulses 20 years ago that are still eventuating. They've sort of been the supporting pillar in a lot of the things that I do. I remember in my early 20s, I walked into a club and I heard a track that one of the DJs was playing. And the way the congas were sitting on top of this music just gave me such a profound feeling. It inspired me so much that I pretty much devoted the rest of my life to achieving that. And you may say, oh, well, that's just inspiration. You heard something. But it wasn't just, it's different from hearing something. There are profound moments in your life where something resonates internally. It's something that's felt from within you. It's almost, the message that comes up is almost like, this is what my life is meant to do. This is my purpose. They're deep, profound things. Not to say that every creative impulse has that profundity, but there are some that do, for sure. Some others are more like literal ideas that pop up, but even those come with the idea of sacrifice. The idea that in order for you to produce that, you're going to have to maybe not go out for a while, tell your girlfriend you can't see her in a few nights. Maybe you're going to have to learn a new software. Maybe you're going to have to get a little bit better at your instrument. But in order to fulfill that idea, you're going to have to sacrifice something in your life. And so this brings me to the big honcho of this whole process of what I found out about the characteristic of the creative impulse. And that is that it seeks growth, development, and learning. So even though it comes as a creative impulse, it always pushes us to grow beyond ourselves. And in that way, it pushes us into the stages of creative process, which I've gone over in another video. But it asks us to look beyond ourselves. It instills in us a seed of an idea that we can choose to fulfill or not. But if we choose to fulfill it, then it pushes us into a period of growth, a period where in order to reach that fulfilled vision, we don't not only have to devote time and attention, not only do we have to sacrifice aspects of our life, but we have to make ourselves vulnerable to growth. And through that process, we end up learning a lot about ourselves. We end up growing as artists and creatives. And we end up also contributing to the world. So in a way, you could say that creative impulse comes with the necessity to be expressed in the world through us. And that may sound like a very spiritual, religious concept. And that's because it sort of is. I mean, creativity sort of blurs the line between practicality and technical mastery and spiritual growth and evolution. We can see how the creative impulse is just like a little spark, but it ends up really pushing us into a life we probably didn't expect, or at least a project we didn't expect, and we learn things along the way. I mean, that's my take on the creative impulse. Have a think about it. Tell me what you think.